Good morning, students. Today we deal with the next part of Elizabethan playwrights. We have already dealt with University Wits and William Shakespeare. In this lecture, we'll be talking about Ben Jonson and other playwrights during this period, and also we'll be talking about the architecture of these playhouses, Elizabethan playhouses. It is very important. It is usually asked as a 4-mark question, the architecture of Elizabethan playhouses. So we'll begin with Ben Jonson. Ben Jonson, we know that Shakespeare's age was marked by tremendous dramatic activity, and the list of all his contemporaries is rather a long list, and of them the most important after Shakespeare, it is always Ben Jonson. Ben Jonson was also his friend, Shakespeare's friend, and he was greatest of them when you consider the power and volume of his genius, when you consider the quantity and quality of his work. And also, we must understand that his aim, Ben Jonson's aim and principles regarding drama were completely different from that of Shakespeare. They were completely in two opposite sides. You will understand in the later part of this lecture. And talking about his life, he was born in London and educated in this Westminster Grammar School, and he became an actor about 1592, and it is said that his education in Westminster Grammar School, which laid the foundation of his sound classical scholarship, which you don't see in Shakespeare. And he opened his career in 1598 as dramatist with this satiric comedy titled Every Man in His Humour. That was his first work, Every Man in His Humour. And for many years, he wrote plays both for the court and for the public stage. Court, it is meant for all those elite people, and public stage, you have all those common masses too, common people too. And later, his decline started with the accession of Charles I during the rule of Charles I. And when you consider his plays, you can group it into three. It contained all those court masques, historical tragedies, and comedies. So these are the three sets of works he dealt with: court masque, historical tragedies, and comedies. So in court masque, we have these works like Hymen, Hue and Cry After Cupid, The Mask of Beauty, and The Mask of Queens. So what is this mask? Mask is something like, as the word indicates, it is something like wearing a mask. Wearing a mask and performing a dance. So it is something like a quasi-dramatic entertainment where there is a pretense provided for these group of strangers, and they will keep this mask and they start dance and singing before an audience of guests and attendants in a royal court. So if you have watched an English movie, you might be familiar with this mask. So that is the first set of plays, and then comes comedies. And in comedies, we have these important works: All Upon or the Fox, and The Alchemist, Epicene or The Silent Woman, and Bartholomew Fair. And he has two historical tragedies to his credit. One is Sejanus and Catiline. Please remember these names. It is usually asked as for 1-mark questions. His historical tragedies, Sejanus and Catiline. And coming to the features of Ben Jonson's plays. So to begin with, we can say that he was a realist. He was a realist because the world of his comedy is not something like a world of romance. It is not something like a world of imagination or fantasy. Here we see contemporary London life. We see the depiction of contemporary London life with all its manners, with all its types, with all its hypocrisies, with all its vices, virtues, and affectations. So he mainly projected the contemporary London life. So he was basically a realist. So there comes the first comparison between Ben Jonson and Shakespeare. So Shakespeare was more of biased to this imagination, while Ben Jonson, he was more of a realist. And uh, his major aim, from that we can understand that his major aim is not to amuse. So Shakespeare mainly meant to amuse the audience, while the major aim was of this Ben Jonson was not to amuse but to correct and teach the audience. To correct and teach the audience. His major aim was to give a kind of a moral lesson to the audience. So that is why it is termed as didactic realism. His realism is defined as didactic realism because he took his art seriously, and he gave importance to the moral functions of the stage. So he believed that art is something which should give out moral lessons to the audience. To it is meant to teach, to mend the ways of the of all those bad ways of the world. So here there is something like a unique ethical purpose attached to his work, and he always modeled his works on all those Latin comedies, and he completely rejected all those lawlessness of romantic drama. So, in the last lecture, when I talked about the difference between classical drama and romantic drama, we talked about how they rejected these unities, three unities, how they never followed all those laws regarding drama. While classical drama, they had this strict rules regarding the unities and several other things. So here, Ben Jonson actually followed all those classical dramas, mainly Latin, and he was greatly inspired by all those Latin comedies. And finally, we must understand that his characterization is based on the idea that each man is possessed or governed by one particular quality or master passion. So every character, every human being has one particular quality. That was his idea, where he talked about what is known as humor, master passion, which he calls as humor. And he believed that everyone is guided by a master passion. And uh, he makes his characters out of this master passion. These characters shows one particular quality, and therefore these characters, they were not complex characters as you see in Shakespeare's work. These characters were more like types. They were more or less similar, which they have some kind of a master passion. They will be governed by master passion, and they will be acting accordingly. They were not as complex as you see in the works of Shakespeare. So even when you look at their names, Ben Jonson's characters' names, they had these names like downright, morose, well-bred, subtle, Sir Epicure. So from the name itself, you will understand the character of that teacher. For example, well-bred is something like a character who will be have well-mannered person, and morose, he's a clumsy person, and then there is subtle. So even the names itself shows the which which quality dominated in that character. So here we understand that even in comedies, in the case of Ben Jonson, it was intellect which predominated rather than creative power. So that is also the basic difference between the works of Ben Jonson and Shakespeare. In Shakespeare, we see this creative power and imagination dominating in all these works. Why? Ben Jonson's work were more of a product of his of his head, while Shakespeare's work was more or less a product of his imagination, or rather, we should say that it is product of his heart. So, this works, it is the product of intellect, and therefore it was very heavy. It was not meant for common people to understand. Also, it lacked what you see in Shakespeare's work, that is spontaneity and charm. And as I said earlier, he is also the founder of Comedy of Manners, which we'll discuss in the next class. What is Comedy of Manners? So that is basically about Ben Jonson. Now, these are the other playwrights of this period. We have John Webster, whose important works, please remember these names. It usually comes as 1-mark questions. He's remembered for these works like White Devil and Duchess of Malfi. So all these works had violent and horrible settings and scenes. And then there is John Ford. Important work is The Broken Heart, which contained all those unnatural emotions and repulsive subjects. And then there is Francis Beaumont and John Fletcher. They are always associated with each other. They did much work in collaboration. And though this Fletcher, he continued with great fluency for the 9 years between his partner's death, that is the death of Francis Beaumont. And they have these works titled Philaster and the Maid's Tragedy. And then comes the last one. It is James Shirley. He belongs to this rule of Charles I, and this is actually the Charles Lamb's phrase. He says Charles Lamb considers James Shirley as the last of a great race of Elizabethan playwrights. And from there is this decline of quality of drama from there on, which declines with the during the rule of Charles I. So these are the other important playwrights. Now we move to the playhouses of this period, Elizabethan playhouses. It is an important question, the playhouses. So earlier drama plays were performed in all those inn-yards, in all those public halls, and even in courtyards, or even in noblemen's houses and other open spaces. And it was in 1576 we had the first two permanent playhouses, that is the theatre and curtain. These are the names of the first playhouses, the theatre and curtain, which came about in 1576. And by the end of Elizabethan age, there were 11 such permanent playhouses, although all these were on the outskirts of London city. And we have the Globe in Southwark and Blackfriars associated with Shakespeare. And the facilities in these theatres improved drastically during Elizabethan age. And also we see this status of actors and playwrights also improved during this period. Earlier there were all those rogues, all those vagabonds, and they were considered as something like a group of bad people. Later, their status increased. All these actors were forced to obtain licenses from all those influential patrons. So later they were known as Lord Chamberlain's servants, Lord Admiral's servants, etc. So their status improved during this period. Later they were just rogues. And now we come to the architecture of playhouses. So these playhouses were very small, and usually they were round or hexagonal in shape, and it was mainly made of wood. And it contained mainly the stage and the boxes or rooms. It is known as boxes or rooms. And the stage, it is roofed in with thatch, but the rest of the building was open to the sky. The stage part is roofed in with thatch, and rest of the building is open to the sky. And this Box is actually meant for all those wealthy people and more aristocratic playgoers. And there were no seats available for all those groundlings, that is all those common people. They had no seat, they had to just sit on the ground in the yard where there is this stage. And coming to the stage is something like a simple platform, a simple platform. And there was talking about movable scenery. There were no movable scenery. The scenery never moved. And but there was this use of furniture, furniture, and along with that, the use of placards. There was this use of placards which showed that there is a change of scene. So there was nothing like movable scene. So the scene change was indicated through the use of placards. Like there will be a placard like this is Athens, this is a forest, something like that, to show the change of scene. And then talking about the stage, we see that at the back of the stage there was something like a partition with two doors opening out of the actors' dressing room, and between the doors there was a third opening which led to the rear stage. And this rear stage was actually used as bedrooms in the drama. It can be sometimes it is used as bedrooms, sometimes it is used as caves or tombs. And also this rear stage also had a gallery, and it was used to represent city walls, upper windows. So rear stage with a gallery, it is a representation of a city wall to represent all those city walls in the drama, within the drama, and upper windows. And there was this flag used in this playhouses. So a flag was put up in the turret to indicate that the play was about to begin or was already in progress. So when there is flag, it is the indication that there is a play going on or play is about to happen. So there is this use of flag. And another important thing to remember when you talk about Elizabethan stage, it is said that Elizabethan drama, we do not have all those women or female actors. No female actors. I'm sorry, no female actors. The roles of these female characters were enacted by boys. And talking about Shakespeare, Shakespeare, as I said earlier, he was an experienced playwright. So he found ways to make up for the limitations of the stage. So when you go to the when you have an understanding of the stage, you will know, you will realize that there were many limitations. There is nothing like movable scenery. There is nothing like a drop curtain. Drop curtain is something like drop curtain is used to close scene. But Shakespeare, being an experienced playwright, he made certain innovations. So in order to indicate the close of a certain scene, he used rhyming couplet, couplet to close each scenes. So he made up some he came up with some solutions to overcome these limitations, like the absence of a drop curtain. And also these, as I said earlier, there were no female actors. So usually Shakespeare presented most of his major heroines disguised as boys. So even these characters, female characters, were presented as boys. They took these disguise as boys. So take for example the characters in plays like As You Like It, The Merchant of Venice, Twelfth Night. All these in all these dramas we see the major heroines disguising themselves as boys. So it becomes easy for a boy to play that role. So these were the innovations brought about by Shakespeare. So these are the major points regarding Elizabethan Playhouse. So here I stop my lecture. In this class we were talking about Ben Jonson and other playwrights, and and the Elizabethan Playhouse. Thank you, girls. Have a nice day.